This last section in chapter 2 is talking about bad and misleading graphs. We talk about two specific things that involve misleading people in terms of how graphs can be shown and the things that we have to watch out for as graphs are presented in social media as well as the regular media. So first of all, what makes a graph bad? Graphs can be bad for two different reasons. The obvious are any mistakes that are made in graphs, whether the statistics are wrong or there's a mistake done in terms of labeling on a graph. The misleading is what's not as obvious, and we'll talk more about the two examples of misleading graphs as we move on in this section. The most important thing here is to develop a sense of when a graph can be misleading. It takes a keen sense of knowing what things to look for and when numbers can be put out of whack. It's typically with the axes, something to do with the axes, something to do with something being blown up in terms of size. We'll talk about some different things. First of all, let's talk about a non-zero axis, and some of the graphs that you'll see are misleading due to the fact that either one of the axes or both of the axes don't start at zero. Take a look at these examples at the bottom as I pull them up here, and let's see if you can come up with what is the main thing to look at here. And hopefully you've come up with the fact that, believe it or not, these are the exact same graph, and yet they look so different, mainly because of a non-zero axis. If you take a look at the left, it starts at 50 and it only goes up by 2's, whereas on the right it starts at 0 and it goes up by 10's. There really isn't that much of a difference with the people that were surveyed in terms of the numbers. The left side can make it look like Republicans are in major favor of something, whereas with the right side it kind of looks like they all agree on something. It's something definitely to take a look at, especially when you're talking about television networks that tend to be skewed one way or another. The other type of misleading graph is a pictograph. Pictographs are usually 3D drawings, and artists or graphic designers can create distortions amongst the size. Thus, you're creating false impressions of the data. Here's an example of a pictograph below, and this is one where it's not so misleading. We're talking about the number of people in the world, simply enough. And this was one that was done by the United States Census Bureau in 2010. And you can see that one person is equal to 1 billion people on the graph. And because there's no variation in size, this pictograph is actually not very distorting to the human eye. However, if you take a look at the graphs that are on the next slide, you'll see where it can be slightly distorting. This is a picture taken from your textbook in comparison with three different graphs. You can take a look at the upper left where it's a pictograph because it's showing part of a dollar bill. That's actually not too misleading because it's only it's a bar graph that's horizontal, so it's not too misleading. But if you take a look at the right side where we have the boxes, the three-dimensional boxes that are drawn, it looks far more misleading because of the fact that you're talking about a very small box as opposed to a very large box with the advanced degrees there on the right. So you can see that between the three graphs, including the bar graph that's on the bottom, you have some major differences in terms of the effect that they could possibly have on people, and that's the things that we have to decipher as we're going through different types of graphs. Your homework in this section is textbook pages 73 to 74, numbers 1 to 10 all. Again, these are not one-line questions that we should be having one-line answers to. These questions should provoke some thought and possibly different answers that we can discuss in class.